Good afternoon. I'm Mindy Wright, a member of the CMC Board of Trustees and Senior Outreach Coordinator at Ohio State. It's really great to see so many people here today. Today, CMC is honored to host a bit of a preview of many things to come this week at Cartoon Crossroads Columbus in our forum, Cartoon Royalty Descends on Columbus. We want to recognize CXC, Columbus Metropolitan Library, and the Wexner Center for the Arts for partnering with us, and the Greater Columbus Arts Council, Creative Design Solutions, and WCBE for their sponsorship today. The Wexner Center for the Arts is showing The Little Prince in 3D tonight, and that's going to be preceded by a conversation with Mark Osborne. Details are available on the Wexner Center and Cartoon Crossroads Columbus websites. Each of our partners and sponsors is represented here today by their many friends and associates. So won't you please help me thank them and welcome Dan Michalko, General Manager of WCBE, to the stage to introduce our speakers.
Thanks, Mindy. As a lifelong cartoon fan, and I see my CBE cohort saying, oh yeah, I am just absolutely thrilled to be here today to do these introductions. WCBE and the Columbus Metropolitan Club, beyond cartooning, share many, many values, not the least of which is being honest brokers and purveyors of news and information and awesome entertainment. That's why WCBE and CMC are proud to work together as partners and be engaged in the community in meaningful ways. Now it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce and welcome, without further interruption, some of the major, really major talents of our time in the world of cartooning and animation and the graphic arts. Please welcome, first, the producer and director of The Little Prince and Kung Fu Panda, Mark Osborne. And then artist in residence for the Columbus Museum of Art and Thurber House, Ron Wimberly. And on the far side, Columbus Dispatch editorial cartoonist Nate Beeler. And our awesome host for the afternoon, assistant professor of comics and narrative practice at Columbus College of Art and Design, Lauren McCubbin. The panel is yours, Lauren. Take it away.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. This is such a great space. I have yet to be here, so I'm excited for that opportunity, especially because I can see actual boats going by the boathouse out in the water. It's so nice. As a professor at Columbus College of Art and Design, one of the things that we try and get students to engage with when we start talking to them about, like, oh, okay, you have come to an art school and you want to be an artist. What does that mean? What is that going to look like? And we're interested in, when we start to talk to them about these things, not just in fostering a creative practice through the craft, right, through the exploring how to make, but the investigation of different modes of making, different modes of seeing, and not just fostering this appreciation for art and execution of art, but really thinking about how to create a sustainable practice of art as a young artist going forth in the world. And so it's very exciting for me to get to talk to a variety of different artists who make and sustain themselves through their artwork. And I'm really interested in talking to you guys about that. And so I hope you're interested too. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, so my first question is, do you have a daily practice of artwork that you follow? Do you have a sketchbook? What is your daily practice of art making?
My daily practice is to want to sketch more often than I do. I think I used to have different daily practices, and that was a big part of sort of when I was exploring art early on in high school and college, and I did a lot of work in my sketchbook and journals. I tend to do more writing, and I try to do that as much as I can every day now, because my work, I've sort of transitioned from being an artist who makes things hands-on to someone who has to be more of a communicator and working with larger groups of people. But yeah, no, I think my New Year's resolution for the past 3 years have been like draw every day, and just to get back into that habit, because it is such an important habit. But for me, it's more about writing and communicating and trying to give myself some time to be creative and to give myself space to be creative, you know.
Okay. And Ron?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to say what I do every day in front of all of these young people. Yeah, I have some habits, but like they're not the type that you would probably mention in mixed company. Yeah, I think I'm a habitual, I habitually devour lots of different media and things, I think would be the one staple. Because like day to day, I may find myself like, some days I may have to focus a lot on writing. Some days, you know, like, okay, well, I really want to I want to get in the mode of doing work with my hands at the drafting table. And I find there's seasons for that more than like a daily practice. Like for a season, I'll have a habit where I get up and I go straight to my drawing board, eat, drawing board, eat, drawing board, bar. You know what I mean? Like, drawing board, you know what I mean? But it changes. It definitely goes through stages, and it depends also on what the job is, you know, like, so if I get an opportunity that I have to move in a relatively quick time, like that'll completely change my daily practice and for the duration of that project. So, I mean, it depends. I think my daily practice is more about like what I eat for breakfast. Trying to stay regular, drinking coffee. Fiber. Yeah, fiber.
So Nate, of everyone here, you have a very daily, practice that your stuff comes out every day.
Oh yeah, and I'm a slave to routine. You know, it's what, you got to have the coffee in the morning, and that gets the juices flowing. Hopefully by the afternoon, and I try to walk a lot. I remember reading an article recently that said that great thinkers all had that walking in common, and so that's something I've been trying to do in recent years. And you just get out in the city, and you're taking in all this different stimulus and stimuli from people walking around and cars and signs and everything like that. So I've got this routine built in as well, and just doodling during meetings. That's one thing that I always end up doing. And whether it's drawing, you know, my editor Alan Miller without him knowing, and tweeting it later on, you know, it's something that I sort of have to do. And I also remember reading an article recently that said that doodling actually can help you retain information. And so I like to think that that's the reason why I do it. It's not just that I'm trying to make my editor have a big nose or something.
Yeah, that's actually, like, that was a conversation that I had with art history professors when we started doing the introduction to the major classes, where you combine the studio practice with the art history practice. And the art history professors are always like, why are they always drawing? It's like, because that's how they're listening. They listen through paying attention to both of these things at once. Mm-hmm. And now they really like it.
I mean, it's a dialogue, so it makes sense, you know, if you're looking at art, to be making art, or making marks. If you're looking at marks, it makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So to go back to something that you said, Mark, that you wish that you had more space for drawing, specifically, that you would like to draw every day. Do all of you find that as you become more successful or busy, that the thing that falls off is the thing that you enjoy most about what you do?
I think the idea of it goes in cycles is true too for me as well, because like when I was making the little prints, it was five years of my life where I was having meetings almost every moment of my life, just dealing with trying to get that movie to be what it is, and there's so much that has to happen that life gets put on hold, and all, you know, anything extra kind of has to wait. And then in between movies, which I'm sort of at now, where it's about sort of developing, you do get a little more time and a little more space. But yeah, I find that the work just completely, anytime I have a project, it completely takes up every inch of my life. And it can be really frustrating for the people around me when that happens. But it's one of those things where when I'm, working on something, it's just like I can't stop thinking about it, and we have this opportunity to make this film and make it the best it can be, and so it feels like I have to spend as much energy as I can on that process while I'm in it as I can. And then as soon as it's done, all I can do is look at it and think of all the things that we should have done differently, and but yeah.
That's kind of part of a project is like, so I was asked doing a few interviews, but they asked me what part of the process do you like the most? And I think that part where they're just a bunch of probabilities.
Right.
Like before, I don't know, well, is it going to take place in Shaolin, or is it going to, like all of these, like you have a dozen different things that it could be.
Yeah.
And you just have like all these ideas, little conversations that characters are having.
Right.
And then when you narrow it down, it's like, oh, well, that time when they were, playing hopscotch, like that didn't get into it.
Right.
But like that still exists for you, right?
Right, there's all the other alternate universes.
Yeah, it still all exists.
Yeah. But yeah, as it narrows down and as you get closer and closer to the end, it just gets more and more uncomfortable as an artistic process, and it gets more frustrating. And I kept my cool up until the very end, and there was a point where I just kind of lost it. And I apologized to everybody, and they were like, no, we're amazed that didn't happen a year ago.
We were trying.
Yeah.
We were seeing what we could get away with.
Yeah.
Well, okay, now I want to follow up on that, which is how do you sustain a really long project? Like how do you, both of you have had incredibly long projects. You've just had the longest political cycle in the universe to deal with.
The project is never ending. Political.
Well, so how do you maintain focus? How do you maintain energy? How do you maintain enthusiasm for something that you're like, oh my God, I never want to see this again as long as I live? There is a point, right?
I mean, I never take a project unless I can fall in love with it, and I never pursue something unless, and Little Prince is a great example because I spent close to a year of saying, I don't want to go down this road unless I really have an idea that I really love, that I really think, to me the book was impossible to adapt. Many people said that, and when I kind of hit upon how I thought I could make it work, I fell in love with the movie. And that's why, the movie has now been out for more than a year and a half. It's been released all over the world. And yet, I love any chance to talk about it. And that's why it's great to come today and talk about the film and show the film later, because it's such a huge part of my life at this point. And so it's kind of impossible not to there are things about the process that become very frustrating. But it's the love for the story that we're telling and the love for the source material and the responsibility that we had for this to take care of that source material that I think kept me every day on my toes and on my best behavior and trying to be in the best space to do the best job we could with it. The challenge was huge. Yeah.
It's kismet that we met, right? Because I hadn't read that until maybe like a year and a half ago.
Okay.
A friend, I did a residency in Angoulême, and I met a young woman there. She gave me the book. She said, read this and you'll understand me more and maybe a little something about French people. And so I put it off. Actually, she gave me that like 3 years ago, right? And I did it 2 years in a row. And so I didn't read it for a year. I came back. She's like, oh, did you read it yet? And I was like, oh, I didn't read it. Right? So it's a kid's book. Like, what am I going to read this, right? And so, but I finally got around to reading it. She gave me 2 versions. She gave me the one by, what's the cartoonist who?
Johann Sfar?
Sfar, yeah. Which is like, I'm glad I looked at it because then he was like in the bar at Angoulême, and I was like, oh, well, I know about this. I know something to talk about. He's got a lot of great work, though. Anyway, when I saw the film was coming out, I was like, I'm not gonna watch it. This is so poetic, like how do you make this into a film? And it's funny you said that. Now I wanna go see it tonight. I mean, if only to see how you solve that problem, But I agree with you 100%. I would say that that sort of fixation, or that, for me at least, because I've generated a lot of the projects. Like I'm basically trying to get someone to pay me to do what I want to do, like the idea that I have. So I'm so interested in the subject matter that's why I have to engage in this relationship for that period of time to make it. It's almost like, you know, it's scratching an itch. It's like getting the monkey off my back just to like, you know, put all of those hours in. And hopefully by the end, I don't have that burden anymore, right. You know? So also it's, the art comes from having an idea that you can't really articulate in any other way but to kind of like create that art. So for me, it's like it lasts for the duration, and sometimes, like you said, it lasts beyond the duration of work. Prince of Cats, though, I got it out of my system.
Yeah, okay, so,
yeah.
So I would like to specifically, can we talk a little bit about Prince of Cats since you brought it up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a long form graphic novel. Ish.
Some people do longer works.
as he gestures to Jeff Smith.
Yeah.
So how many pages?
I think it's 138, I think. Yeah.
And how long have, from inception to it's now being re-released by Image, correct?
Yeah, well, you know, I released it, it was released before in a broken format through Vertigo, and it went out of print, and we brought it back like 4 years later, and kind of how I feel like it should have always been released. But from the moment I had the first idea, you know, ideas sit in your head, you read things, you forget things, then they come back to you, and then they become part of a fuller idea. I don't even know. I drew that book in Crown Heights, I drew part of that book in Tokyo, I drew part of that book, like, you know, I had it for a while, and I was doing a lot of other things, and I was kind of like, you know, being a kid in New York, I was like in my mid to late 20s when I was putting that together, so, and I don't know, I can't even say how long, it was at least 4 years, yeah, off and on, not steady, you know, like I said, I did other works in between. I adapted Something Wicked This Way Comes for comics in between working on that book, yeah, so.
But you feel like you said, you're like, and this is done.
Yeah, and it's done. You know, it was very difficult for me. It's kind of like it's maybe my first work. So, yeah, I figured out a lot of things. I think in the process of working on that book, I discovered what my process is, like how I approach work, like maybe formalistically too. Yeah.
And did you actually feel like it reached an end point naturally, or I mean, you talked about earlier about having all these scenes that fall on the floor, right? All these different avenues that you wanted to go, but you aren't able to do it because of time. You know, I kind of feel like when it's an artistic pursuit, you know, that you reach an end point, and it doesn't really feel like an end point fully. Did it feel like that for you?
Well, Tybalt dies in the play, so it was easy.
Okay.
But no, there was actually, yeah, when I started, when Eric at Image was like, yeah, we want to do this, I was like, word, all right, well, there is a scene, like there was a scene with Juliet that I wanted to do, like he was like, B, you have 2 other projects we announced. Just put this back out, right? Like, you're not going to go back in. I wanted to go back in, you know, like, there were moments that I remember, you know, I remember thinking about the characters, because if you're writing a character, it's like you kind of have, maybe this is why I'm so terrible with names. It's like I have all of these fictional people in my head, things that they've done, you know, like when they went to school, like I have, you know, a ton, and I was like, wow, I would really like to share this moment that Juliet has, like playing, you know, Mama, sick in bed, call the doctor, and the doctor said, you know, like that sort of thing. I was like, yeah, I want to do that, like burning cars, like a lot of, you know, like New York stuff, right? But he's like, no, just leave it. It's good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think of George Lucas in those moments.
Yeah.
Just leave it.
Yeah. THX wasn't bad though. I feel like
no, I mean, I'm just
THX
saying to go back in and to revise the revisions he did on,
I think
okay.
THX was
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
And I think maybe it was too bad that worked. Like,
Right.
if that had
Right,
failed-
that was the testing ground. And then,
if that had failed, he wouldn't have,
went
So because
bananas.
because his THX revisions were so successful, then he just went in and just messed up
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Yeah, you never want to do a Greedo shot first.
So another question I have, and in a few minutes we're going to move to questions from the audience, but as this kind of like a final thought, as it were. Nate, when you're working, like you said, you have meetings with your editorial staff, but when you sit down and do the work, you sit down and do the work on your own, correct?
Right.
Right. Ron, the majority of your work is completely by yourself, correct?
I mean, that's it's deceptive to put it like that because I have like a few friends who, they're like my sounding board, or like my editors, we go out to eat and like a lot of story happens then.
Right.
Whether or not they like it, that's where it's gonna happen.
So this is like you guys don't feel isolated because you have a team. You have an expansive number of people who are ready to work with you. You guys are like kind of on your own. Do you feel, is there some value in that would be different than if you got a giant team to work with?
Well, for me, it's my opinion. It's not the newspaper's opinion. So when it comes down to it, it is just me and the piece of paper. My whole process is that I want to get in as much research on the topics of the day as possible. And, I bounce my own opinions off of my editor. I just want to be as informed as possible about what's going on. And so that part of my process is absolutely necessary. And also just because I think that you need to have different perspectives to get into that place eventually when it's just you and the piece of paper or the film or whatever, and whatever art you are doing. It does become this deeply personal process. But you need that, and I said the word stimulus before, you need that stimulus.
Right.
I kind of feel like there's this notion in art, like this narrative, this myth that we have of like the artist working alone, like this rugged individual, which I actually think is kind of like unhealthy. I think it goes beyond the artist. Like in America, it's a big myth, But like if you look at a lot of the great artists, like they're definitely there's a network, there's a group of people that they're involved. I think like it happens organically. Like so in my case, I don't necessarily have the economic structure to maybe pay all of those people who are but like maybe in a corporate sense or in like a business, it's like, okay, well, the business obviously knows this is a great way to move creativity and productivity forward, right? To have people to help, half the time is like I tell a story to someone and like, yeah, Ron, so when is it gonna come out? Like now this is like my line producer, this is like my editor. You know what I mean? Like the next time we go to dinner, I wanna have something I've done a little bit more so I can tell them like, yeah, no, it's coming along. Like I've done some pages. So I think Matt Bors helped a lot on Lighten Up. Actually, his sort of picking at me is how I came up with the hex code. Because sort of like subject and formal constraints are such an important part of how I work. He just kept giving me like, he kept teasing things out. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, well, I want a picture, you should have a picture of you at the beginning. And so like, because that was a problem for me. At first I was like, no, I want to be invisible. But then he gave me that problem. Then it's, okay, so then the entire structure of the comic has to change, right? Mm-hmm. Now I have to think of what is the reason for me to have that picture of me in the comic.
So can we just explain really quick for people who don't know what Lighten Up is? So Lighten Up was a comic that Ron did, and was it posted online first?
Yeah, it was in the nib.
Okay. Yeah, and so do you want to talk a little bit about like the impetus behind it? And...
Yeah. It was a comic. I was working in corporate comics. I was working on a short piece in an X-Men anthology. It's not like a big anthology. It was like Wolverine died, so they need to capitalize on that. So they got a bunch of people to draw it, right? I was one of the people. And so Wolverine had an ex, like, which is ironic, kind of, like it's a weird coincidence. His ex-girlfriend, who's not an X-Man, was, she's like, I guess she's got a heritage. She's like Latin American, and like this is where it set things off for me, right? Latin American and white. So like to me, I'm like, yo, well, she could be from Argentina, right? Like she could be from, like, what are you trying to say? What does that even mean, right? And I was told to lighten the skin of the character. And this had happened to me before. Sometimes I felt like, you know, maybe I had a dark character. Maybe it could have been a printing thing. In this case, it wasn't that. So, and I had gotten a little bit, you know, got a little bit swag over the years. I was kind of like, I'm curious, like, no, you know, like, I don't think so. I hit her with a joke. I was like, well, she's Mexican and white. I don't know, like, you know, I kind of broached that difference between the construct of race and ethnicity, and how actually what you said to me does not explain to me why she would have any particular color of skin, right? Because white is not an ethnicity. White is like, it's a construct. It's like, you know, Italians didn't used to be white, and now they're white, you know, like, so it's like, you know, what are you even saying to me? And in a joking sort of way, but the editor didn't get that. So anyway, long story short, I didn't change, you know, I sent the work back in as if I had changed it, but I didn't change the color. She didn't notice, right? It's like she didn't know, like no one noticed. Like they didn't notice that I changed the blue guy like a lighter shade of blue or a darker shade of blue. You know, like they didn't notice. So I did a comic about it later.
And then in your editorial process of the comic, you reached out to somebody else to talk about it.
The comic is way more articulate than what I have been just now. So like, just read the comic.
Because of editors.
I mean, yeah, because of editors, right?
Yes.
But it's like, and that's why you make the comic.
I was gonna say it's totally on Tumblr. You can find it very easily.
Totally on display at the Museum of
Yeah, go to the
It is
museum.
totally on display at the Columbus Museum of Art as part of
And I
Ron's
think,
residency.
the display, what they've done is it's good because it kind of captures the way it was meant to be seen on your, you know, device. It wasn't built for a desktop. It was built for like, you know, your iPhone or whatever.
Right.
I was trying to think of like
Samsungs.
a non-brand. Yeah,
Your exploding phones.
yeah, it's lit. It's lit.
So
It's literally lit.
they
It's on
they
fire.
have a you know,
Put it
they have
out.
smaller groups that they work with,
Yeah.
right? But you know, they're the ones doing the drawing. Do you ever have a moment where you're like, I wish everyone would just leave me to do the work?
I mean, I've even said this earlier, and I say this sometimes. It's like, if I could do anything, I'd do shorts. I started doing shorts. I think it's like the most. I was exploring as a filmmaker and making shorts, and I still wasn't doing it all by myself. And I think it's impossible to make films and make animation completely in isolation. I do think that I've worked now with large groups of people. It was something that took me a while to figure out how to do, and now I've kind of learned that, and it's really exciting to sort of gain experience doing that, and the idea of sort of doing that again is exciting. But you know, I know, or you know, I hope that I'll be able to at some point go back into the garage, you know, as a very old man, and you know, make things out of clay again. And I do miss being able to like create things, and you know, it does. But I'm having the time of my life working with incredibly talented artists that you know, are way more talented than I am, and I'm really collaborative. And the ways that you guys are talking about working with editors and you know, with your friends and like this network, you know, to be able to bring together hundreds of people that want to tell a story, it's like this incredible like opportunity. And so, yeah, I really enjoy that. But I'm good with deadlines. And I don't know if I could do every day. I don't know if I had a deadline every day, I would crack. So,
That's the thing about a joke. I feel like when you have a constraint like that, I feel like the humor melts away. Like someone says like, yeah, tell a joke. You're like, all right. Or say something funny. And it's like, then you can't say anything funny. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, the benefit is that, I'm working with the news, and there's plenty that's funny
Right,
nowadays.
right.
So you just, at this...
But do you ever just want to just show the news? Like, I don't need to say.
There it is.
Are you watching this?
We're illustrators now in the political cartooning. The caricatures is even less of a caricature than the candidates actually are.
I wish it were a caricature.
How can I ask you, how often is it like, it's deadline, you got to hand it in, and you're just like, well, there it is.
I think that's just about every time.
Because that's like every movie I've made is like, it's ripped out of my hands.
Exactly.
It's not a,
exactly. The thing is, you make compromises every second up until deadline, and you got to send it off. And
Have you ever stop the presses?
Oh yeah. I'm determined to do that one day with one of the cartoons.
Are there even presses like that now?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's like a rubber plate type deal. Like
I don't know exactly what they are.
Exactly.
Yes, we have that music playing at the press. So.
Okay, so I have a script. It is CMC's tradition to take audience questions. So please, when you come up for a question, state your name, ask your question, and we thank you in advance for not making long editorial comments. Let's proceed with the first question.
Happy to take the honor and ask the first question. Thank you all for being here. I wonder, you have interactions with fans at various points, and I wonder if you could each share a little story about your most memorable interaction with a fan and what that was like and how that went, how that happened.
Most memorable fan interaction.
I don't know.
I will tell you my most memorable interaction as a fan.
Okay.
I have two really embarrassing stories about myself. One, as a fan, I met Grant Morrison, and I was so incredibly freaked out by Grant Morrison, and also I had maybe been drinking, that I threw up on his shoes. And then Tom has heard me tell this story many times. The first time I met Jaime Hernandez, I burst into tears.
Wow.
I was just like, I like you so much. So those are mine. So do you ever have anybody cry on you, Ron? Or anybody ever like freak out at you?
Usually I get spittle.
Oh yeah, that's gross. I know what you're talking about. It's like, calm down, B. I don't know. Like I'm getting to. I'm learning about fans and like what it means to be a fan. Or I'm just like, I'm over it. I'm a person too. Like I'm just a guy trying to make his way through life and make his art. You know what I mean? Just treat me like a human being. That's kind of like how I feel. I mean, I haven't had any wild, memorable experiences, but I feel like what I'm learning is to kind of respect that barrier. Like it is a thing. It is a thing because there's this weird sort of disconnect with like who you are, like your public image, and like who you are and who your public image is. It's a great band, by the way. I guess it's like Public Image Limited. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how I feel about the whole fan thing. Like, and the older I get, the more I'm kind of like, man, I should have just worn a mask from the beginning, or like, you know what I mean? So that you could go places and no one would recognize you, and then you could go and you could do your work. I mean, your way of connecting to the audience being the work. I don't know.
And for me, I draw in Columbus, and so I'll walk around town, and if somebody recognizes me from my caricature online and says, I liked your cartoon, that's really positive for me, because the point of the cartoons, editorial cartoons, is to provoke discussion in your community. And it's really rewarding for me to see that happen, because it means, people are actually responding to your cartoons, and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And they're reading the paper.
There was a kid right outside of downtown, Atlantic Center in Brooklyn. Came out, school had let out, and just a random kid came up to me and said like, yo, I like your comic. And I was like, in the street, you know what I mean? That was like, that kind of was like, wow. First of all, he's a kid, you know what I mean? So it means like, it's, when they say like kids, it's not just for comics are not just for adults anymore. I'm like, I want someone who's not like 50 years old to read my comics. You know what I mean? Like, I want kids to read my comics. You know what I mean? Like, it is for kids again. You know what I mean? Like, I want a kid to roll it, put it in their back pocket, and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Read it, you know. You know, not a little, you know, like, you know, just like, that made me really excited. Because I was like, wow, the streets are like, kids are reading my comics.
Yeah, I think nobody knows who I am. Like, I mean, if I go and I do an event or I do a talk, and I love it when students are, you know, are affected by the work. Or Little Prince has been a great experience because I've been all over the world, and people love the book so much, and then when they love the movie, it feels great to be a part of that. But I have more stories of me not barfing on people. I have more stories of I got to work with Jeff Bridges, and I got, you know, like things like that I could share. But yeah.
Fine, be a fan your own way.
Yeah.
All you gotta do is say SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah.
You got the kids running out.
Yeah.
So next question.
Hi, I'm Mary Urena, and since all of you are creative souls, I was curious as to who are the artists that inspire you?
Well, I mentioned George Lucas, and I say that because I was 7 years old when the first Star Wars came out, and it just changed like the way my brain worked. It changed the way it opened up my imagination, and it started me, like my entire childhood, I think, was just Star Wars obsessed, and I think it put me on the path to wanting to tell stories when I realized later in life how influential that work was and why, and what was really going on. But I would say at this point, yeah, I mean, there's so many influences, there's so many incredible filmmakers that I look up to, both in animation and live action. And yeah, and Jeff Smith, of course. Where'd he go?
He's over there now.
Yeah, yeah.
I could rattle off a list like
Yeah.
Peter Chung, Dave Cho, Paul Pope, Dave Cooper, Warhol, Basquiat, Sheila, Klimt. I could keep going. Tadanori Yoko, Murakami Takashi. Oh man, and every year there's a new one, you know? So, and like it's not even just artists, man. Like, you know, a lot of musicians, you know, like a lot of punk and post-punk, just like sort of the way of incorporating philosophy and ideas into like artistic practice, you know what I mean? Like, definitely. I mean, it's crazy, because Bernard Krigstein was huge, you know? Just like how punk, like his way of approaching, like trying to make a union for cartoonists, you know? Even though I heard it was like way unsuccessful, as the world we exist in now you can tell. But like his Master Race cartoon, like the marks that he used, you know, like when Basquiat said he wanted to be a cartoonist, you know, Chuck Jones, yeah, Chuck Brown, James Brown. So yeah.
And for me, I grew up reading comics, and so I was a big fan of just about every superhero comic there was. And I started reading comics in the early 90s, and right around the time that Image Comics started up. So spandex out the wazoo for me. And you know, locally we had Jeff here, and so I read Bone while he was putting them out. And the comics gave way to editorial cartooning for me in high school, and I started reading Newsweek, and I was reading the Dispatch every single day, and seeing the cartoons that they ran in there. And so I really latched on to some of the greats in political cartooning, like Jeff McNally, who also did the comic strip Shoe, and Pat Oliphant. Down in Cincinnati, they had Jim Borgman at the Enquirer for a lot of years, and his stuff just blew me away. You know, in editorial cartooning, there's different schools that have gone throughout history, and right around the time that Pat Oliphant came out in the 60s, he ushered in this new school, which was a lot more cartoony and loose, but also realistically drawn at the same time, and lots of lines. And Jeff McNally was influenced by him, and then Jeff McNally influenced Jim Borgman, and Jim Borgman influenced me. And we're all part of the same genetic line there.
Okay, because I am curious and I would like to follow up, and I get to do that because I'm sitting here. One contemporary artist that you're really into right now, in your field, out of your field, whatever.
Contemporary, well.
I didn't know this was a stumper.
Well, I have to say I'm a huge fan of Adventure Time. I think Adventure Time and I think Penn created something truly unique, and it kind of blew the lid off and made creativity kind of expand, you know, in the same way that that I really feel like Miyazaki has been doing in animated features, and so that I thought made a huge impact on me and on so many people. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's funny, we were talking, Dan worked on Adventure Time.
Yeah.
I never got into Adventure Time until Steven Universe. Then I could kind of like get into it because of Steven Universe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm more of a Steven Universe fan. What? Man, you skipped me, come back to me.
I read editorial cartoons every day, and there are a lot of great editorial cartoonists working. Matt Davies is a big influence of mine now, and Jack Oman, he's at the Sacramento Bee. Matt Davies is at Newsday, and I read editorial cartoons every day, and that's really what I get besides everything that I see on Twitter. There's some great caricature artists like Jason Seiler, Thomas Fluharty that I really like, and gosh, whoever designs those memes on Facebook.
Sure.
Me. You know, like, aside from the ones that I picked, that I mentioned, contemporary artists in that list I rattled off, there's this guy who I saw like a few years ago, Yamaguchi Akira, and he does sort of like, he's kind of super flat school. He'll do sort of ukiyo-e style drawings, but he's really influenced by like Rubens, and he'll do like a science fiction almost style version of the Japanese, like the Russian Sino or whatever war. You know, like he did like Roppongi Hills as like a ukiyo-e spread. Like he's ill, he's sick. Like that guy is, I wouldn't say he's very influential to me, but like I really like to look at his work. Like he's got a way of like thinning out the oil so that he can use it almost transparently on the canvas. And it's just like, yo, I really appreciated seeing his work. That's like a guy would go, oh, there's this other, maybe someone in the audience knows. Who's the guy? He's from Nigeria. He does these like blankets almost made out of garbage. And every time he shows the work, it's different because in each space they hang it in a different way. And his name, geez, I want to take my phone out. That guy is inspiring to me. I can't remember his name, but like I look up blanket Nigeria recycled, and he comes
Cool.
up.
All right, I think that we have time for one last question. Two last questions. Sorry, two last questions.
My name is Chuck Palmer, and my question is for you, Mr. Osborne. I apologize, have not seen the movie yet, The Little Prince.
You should come tonight.
Yeah. From the trailers, I can tell there's two distinctive animation styles. Can you talk a little bit about the decision to do that and how you came to bringing the familiar style to life, and then how you married them together?
Yeah. That's actually great question. I feel like it's a plug for later at 5 o'clock. Before we screen the movie, I'm going to talk a lot about the origin and how I went from loving this book so much that I couldn't have imagined a movie about it being made. The book lives in the imagination of the reader. And so to me, I was only wanting to make a movie out of the book if we could somehow preserve the book. I didn't want the book to get hurt in any way, and I didn't want the story to get stretched out. So it was actually one of the earliest ideas I had to preserve the book and allow it to be small and poetic, was to render the book
as the story within a larger story, and that the book would be rendered in a different kind of animation. And I chose stop motion animation as a way to be sort of pure and very a lot closer to those original illustrations in the book, but also a lot closer to sort of a very handmade, very poetic, and in some ways childlike interpretation. And so that was kind of the big idea, was to tell a larger story using CG animation, which is what you would expect from a big animated movie. And that larger story is actually about how profoundly the book can affect your life. And so I'm able to sort of tell a story. I'm telling the book, you know, I'm sort of doing an adaptation, but I'm also then adapting the experience that people have had with the book. The book's been around for like 70 years, and it's affected so many people. It's been translated into 260 different languages, and so there's a great deal of responsibility to not only adapt the words of the book, but sort of the meaning and the way the book has affected us. So that was the big idea, and that was what I really felt like was the right way to protect the book. And yeah, if you know the book or if you don't know the book, the movie is actually designed to be a way to both celebrate the book and also discover the universe for the first time. So if you hadn't read it, you know, I'm curious. I'm now nervous that you're, you know,
no.
Whenever somebody loves the book, I get really nervous, especially if they have a tattoo. There's a lot of tattoos. But yeah, it's been received very, very well from people who really love the book, which is great.
Is so poetic. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah,
If you are curious to learn more about this, again, 5 o'clock at the Wexner Center, Mark will be talking about the movie, and then at 7 o'clock there will be a screening of The Little Prince in 3D, which is very exciting. Okay, so Jeff, would you like to ask a question?
I would. I'd also like to point out that the CXC Festival goes on through Sunday. The culminating event is Saturday and Sunday at the downtown main library, with exhibits like in the Museum of Art, which is where Brandon's thing is hanging. But really, I just wanted to say a couple things. Grant Morrison is very used to people throwing up on his shoes. You don't think you need to worry about that at all. I wanted to ask Nate, is the person who wrote that doodles make you smarter, was he a cartoonist?
I don't know. I think he was probably just somebody who got detentions like me.
But my real question is for each of you, could you describe your studio, your workspace? What's around you?
I don't have one right now. I'm actually, my space is in the middle of the living room of our house. So I'm actually, and so every project I sort of have a new space, and so I'm in between projects right now. So I'm just trying to find places to work.
Yeah, but there's something, you have something that's there all the time, like certain books or,
well, I
you've got to have your music and.
This is the first time where I've actually been able to have my books had been boxed up for a while, and we were doing a lot of moves. And so, yeah, I do have my whole book collection, and I've actually just, finally kind of have those right there. And then my music collection, yeah, I can't work without music. But yeah, I can be very portable, but it's best to have all that reference for sure.
Same. My space. I mean, when it's not a haunted attic, it's it's an apartment in Brooklyn. Like I have kind of like, you know, there's not a lot of space in New York, but I have like a little room in between like a living room and like my bedroom where I have 2 desks that I've made with a friend of mine who likes, you know, I have a friend who we kind of like, we spent time building these desks. So like we get projects that we'll do with each other, you know, every once in a while. And I have these desks and I work on a light box that I made after going to Angoulême, because like I had this table that was like a light table. And that was the first time that I worked really big. I had always had a problem doing like 2-page spreads because I didn't like to draw over the crease in the middle. I just thought it was stupid. Like I'm not gonna do that. Tape the back, I'm not gonna do it. So, but when I was in Angoulême, I had this huge light table. I was like, oh wow, this is cool, you know. So I started making larger pages. So I recreated that for my apartment. Tons of books, like a little, you know, music system. The books are just very important, I think. Even just knowing they're there. Sometimes I use them. Now that the internet is so crazy, you know, for things that you don't need detailed reference, it's like it's useful. But I was talking to Paul Pope about it the other day, and about how the internet has limited the reference that people use. So now, like, if you have your books, it's like, okay, I may have a costume book that I got from a library auction that has costumes in it that, like, you don't have, it's not online. You know what I mean? And like, so when I do my period piece, like, I'm gonna pull from that book. I'm not gonna pull from Google, because like, maybe they're in there, you know, it's a deep cut, but it's like, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, dude, Google is the bane of my existence with students.
Yeah.
Nate, what's your studio like?
Well, my studio is the newspaper, so I sit next to Herb Grant, the letters editor, and Barb Fisher, Barb Carmen, who is an editorial writer, and we're just outside the office of the editorial page editor, and I've got my little cubby there, and with my computer, and I've got my drawing table, and I basically just wear a rut in the carpet between the computer and the drawing table in my editor's office, and I've got piles of papers and sketches, and that's about all you can really see. It's kind of hard to find anything else. But to me, it's just reading the news on the computer and the drawing table, and that's really all I need.
All right. And okay, our final question.
Hi, my name is Allie McDonald, and I'm a student from ACPA. And as a young and budding artist, I wanted to know how each of you got your starts, basically, in film and comics and all that.
I got really interested in animation when I was going to Pratt in Brooklyn, and I transferred to CalArts to focus on studying animation. And my first summer, I took my reel of all my work from CalArts, and I took all the little things I had done, all the experiments, and I put it all together, and I went out and I pounded the pavement. I got some kind of directory, and I went out and I applied all over the place, even to people who were like, I don't know why you're applying here, you know. But I accidentally got hired by somebody because I had mislabeled. I said, I hadn't learned to be an animator yet, so I said, I'm an animation designer. And someone who needed a designer hired me to do some animation, and it was like, it was like a total. And I think years later, I ended up working there for a while and did a lot of, and it allowed me to do experimental animation because it wasn't your typical job. But years later, I think she even thought I went to Art Center and not CalArts. Like, she was even confused about where I came from. Anyway, so mystery. Yeah, but I just say pounding the pavement, increase the chances that you'll be at the right place at the right time by just going out and going to as many places as you can and go, you know. And I also got an early job from a CalArts alum, and like I basically got hired because I was a CalArts, you know. So
those networks, man.
Yeah, that was good.
You want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I got my start because I got detention. And I was doodling in class, I think, and probably had to use soap on the desk because I used to draw with a pencil on the actual desks, and I had to clean it up afterwards with comment or whatever. And I was in detention either for that or for coming into class late or something, and I was doodling in the office, and my high school student newspaper's advisor came in and saw me, and she said that I should check in with her next year and see if I could draw cartoons for the paper. That's how I got my start in editorial cartooning, but professionally it was because I went to journalism school and I learned how to write, which I'm not very good at anymore. But I
imagine you knew how to write before you went to journalism.
Well, yeah, I mean, you knew the basics of grammar and all that. But I enjoyed writing in high school when you had free reign. But journalism is telling a story as efficiently as possible, and I was okay at it. But I didn't really have. It takes a certain amount of grit to have a reporter, and it's a really hard job to do, and I didn't have what it takes to be a reporter, and so I thought I would be an editor. And so I got a journalism degree, and I got my foot in the door in newspapers with a copy editing job. And I did copy editing and page design, and was able to get a cartooning job on the side, freelance, with a few newspapers. And I built up a portfolio of work, and I was able to go to the newspaper at a certain point and say, hey, I draw cartoons here, and I want to draw for you. And so I split my time between copy editing and page design and cartooning. And that's how I got my foot in the door there.
I went to Pratt. I had never gone to art school before, but I got into Pratt Institute, coincidence, same school. And I had to pick my major, and I picked art direction because I thought it was going to be like, I didn't know what art direction was really. I thought it had something to do with like making movies. You know what I mean? And the irony is, like, I was kind of reading Adbusters, and I've always been kind of like really into what art direction, what advertising does, you know? But by sophomore year, I was like, I can't work for the devil. Like, so I went to illustration. And by the time I got through illustration, I was like, well, at that point in time, we were wondering if illustration was ever even going to be a thing again, right? And also, I wanted to tell stories, like I had ideas. So I started to pick up comics at Jim Hanley's, which was a comic book store in the city. And I joined the comic book club. Dan James, who's Dan Bandit now, who illustrated, this T-shirt, also designed the clubhouse and a lot of the backgrounds in Adventure Time. Yeah. He was there too, and you know, another guy who designs windows for LVMH now, like for Louis Vuitton, he was in there. So we were in the comic. I got out, went to San Diego, went to a bunch of other conventions, got any work that I could. Like how you said, it's just like put yourself out there over and over and over again, and give yourself the opportunity, give yourself the, how did you put it? It was so eloquent. Anyway, give yourself more odds, you know.
Right, increase the odds.
Increase the odds.
Right place at the right time.
Exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
Oof, put it on something. Put it on a T-shirt. You know. So and that's kind of how I got started. I got picked up at a convention.
As a professor, I could say, talk to as many people who do the thing that you like to do as possible, right? Like if you want to make comics, talk to people who make comics. If you want to do animation, talk to people who do animation. Find these people in your world. If you want to be an editorial cartoonist, talk to Nate, he's right there.
But like show up with a drink in your hand for them, like food or something, you know what I mean? Just don't roll up and be like, you don't see two people talking at a party and like they're having a conversation like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna talk to you about business right now. At least come with like a glass of wine and be like, here, I got this for you. You know what, there's this thing that you do, and then I think more apt to want to talk to you.
Don't say, give me a job.
Yeah.
I think the best advice I can give to students, and it's the advice I give all the time, is don't spend your time trying to figure out how to get a job. Don't create a reel of your work, or don't do anything that is going to be what you think will help you get a job. The best jobs in the world are going to come from you exploring who you are as an artist and pursue the things you love, do the work you love, and that will get you noticed by the right people at the right time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how much I hate looking at work when it's clear that it's done just to try to get somewhere. You know.
Remember that when you're starving, though, because it's hard. It's hard to remember that when you really want that work.
It's easy to say.
It's easy to say, but like you're absolutely right.
All right. So. Do we have one more question?
I don't have a question, but this is for Ron. Because you asked, I think the artist that you were trying to remember was Al Anatsui.
Yeah, Anatsui, yeah. His name always bugs me out because like I think he's from Nigeria, but it sounds like it's a Japanese name almost. Yeah. He's great. He's amazing. Go see his work if you can.
All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and turn it back on over to our friends from the Columbus Metropolitan Club.
We hope to see many of you at the Wexner Center for the Arts to see The Little Prince this evening and to also hear from Mark Osborne some more. Please thank our partners, Cartoon Crossroads Columbus, Columbus Metropolitan Libraries, and the Wexner Center for the Arts, and our sponsors, WCBE, GCAC, and Creative Design Solutions, and of course our speakers, Mark Osborne, Ron Wimberly, Nate Beeler, and Lauren McCubbin. And thanks to all of you for being here. We look forward to seeing you at CMC again soon.